We hope you enjoy our performance of Counting Stars by One Republic.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Hareen. I am from the Water Watchers. We will get started shortly, but first I've got some Zoom tips for you. The first being that you can turn on the closed captioning by clicking on the little button on the bottom that says live transcript. The next thing is that you have all been muted, but we still want to hear from you. So please use the chat box to let us know who you are and why you're joining us today. If you require any support at all whatsoever, you can reach out to Danny, whose email is listed on the screen. And last thing is that this meeting is being recorded. And now I will pass it on to Linda to get us started.
Thank you so much, Corrine. It's wonderful to have so many people joining us here tonight. My name is Linda Lukasik, for those who don't know me. I'm the Executive Director of Environment Hamilton, and I'm a hardcore advocate for freezing Hamilton's urban boundary. I know that you're all here because you know that option 2 is what we need to do, and of course, that's no urban boundary expansion. This is essential if we have any hope of building a climate resilient, inclusive future for our city. We have an amazing lineup of speakers tonight who will provide you with so many reasons for why stopping sprawl has never been more important. But before we go there, I would like to invite Summer Thomas to do the land acknowledgement. Summer.
Hi there. Thank you all for coming tonight, and I guess I'll just get started. So most of us here tonight are most likely listening in from somewhere on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. This land that we are on right now has a few governing rules, and I want to take a minute to cover some of them with you. The first one I'm sure many of you have heard of is the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Agreement. This agreement was put in place in these lands over 900 years ago by the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, comprising of the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk peoples, and the Anishinaabe, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi, Mississauga, Saulteaux, and Algonquin peoples. This wampum belt describes this land gifted to the nations by Creator as a dish filled with food and medicine plants, water, tree people, animal people, space, and everything anyone could need to stay healthy and fed. Every nation at the table is to be fed with the same spoon, sharing the contents of the dish equally and fairly with one another. Only what is needed is to be taken from the dish, with contents being left for the next person who will eat, and the dish and table are to be kept clean and cared for. The next wampum belt agreement I would like to share with you is called the two-row wampum. This belt was created much later than the Dish with One Spoon belt and contains two lines running down its length, which represent the paths taken by two boats sailing side by side down a river. The first boat is a birch bark canoe carrying the languages, traditions, customs, laws, and peoples of the indigenous nations of Turtle Island. The second is a Dutch flute, a ship carrying the laws, languages, peoples, and lifestyles of the Europeans. These two boats sail down the river side by side, never blocking each other's paths, allowing each to steer their own ships, and respecting one another's possessions, cultures, and individuals. We are all treaty people. This brings us to today. We are here tonight to discuss fundamentally an attack on this living land. The soil, which has been nurturing the food and medicine plants for thousands of years, and the water, which houses the fish peoples and generously gives life. The land and water that we call Hamilton has been abused for decades. As settlers, we have forgotten to only take our fair share of the contents from the dish, to leave some for the next people to eat, and to clean the dish and table after we've finished. I hope that tonight we can all begin to take steps towards remembering that this land, the waters, their creatures are alive, and it is our responsibility to care for them. With the ongoing news of the uncovering of mass graves of innocent children, victims of residential schools and genocide, intergenerational trauma is being reignited. I am asking that we take a minute of silence in rage, mourning, and solidarity with the stolen children and their communities. With that, I'd like to thank you all for being here today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Summer. I'd now like to introduce my co-host for tonight's meeting, Mike Balkwell from the Wellington Water Watchers. And I just want to say we're really lucky and thankful to have Mike helping with both strategy and fundraising for the Stop Sprawl Hamont campaign. Mike is going to provide a quick review of tonight's agenda. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Linda. The Water Watchers supports grassroots groups that are fighting to protect water and the environment, and you are the leaders, and we're so thankful that you are leading and that we are able and in a position to provide support to you. This campaign is very impressive. I think in the last 3 weeks, you've managed to, you've organized to cause more than 3,000 submissions online to to the option 2, no urban boundary expansion option. That's terrific. And I know that you're doing other things out in the community. That's just part of the tip of the iceberg. And the purpose of the rally tonight, this is actually a virtual rally. And I don't know if you've been to a virtual rally before, but it's different, it's fun. I'm glad you're here. And what we want to do is celebrate all the good things you've accomplished so far and motivate ourselves and give ourselves directions and suggestions on how to push for the next week. We'll talk a little more later that this is actually one of many hurdles that need to be jumped to stop the boundary expansion, but it's a very important one. And if I could stick with my race analogy for a minute, you're running at a very high pace, and I'm confident you're going to clear the first hurdle. The agenda that we're going to have tonight, you can see on the screen, is we have almost a dozen exciting speakers, all of whom are going to speak for a fairly short time. But the first speaker, Nancy Hurst, is going to, in a moment, she's going to describe the issue in the timeline that we're working on. I do want to say that because there are so many people in this meeting, which is terrific, more than 500 people RSVP'd, we're not able to have back and forth conversation on Zoom like we can when we're in a room together. And boy, wouldn't it feel terrific, pardon me, if we were all in a room together, all 500 of us, feeling each other's energy, seeing each other's faces, being able to smile and encourage each other on. And so while we're here in Zoom land, I want you to imagine that. I want you to create some imaginary room where we're all there together and we can see and feel the energy that we all bring to this. To try and help make that happen, if you have, first of all, we want you to use the chat box to introduce yourself, like Nancy just did, saying hello from downtown Hamilton, and Jenny did from Caledon. So introduce yourself in the chat box. And as each speaker speaks, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box, and that speaker and our other speakers will respond to you through the chat box. So that's going to be the major part of the meeting. Then we're going to talk about the Take Action campaign, what you can do, how you can help more people in the community to make submissions to the survey, and then the other hurdles that need to be jumped. Then we're going to do some fundraising. And I've got some pretty exciting news to share with you when we get to the fundraising, which is going to then help to give your leadership group an idea of what resources they're going to be able to have to plan with confidence how to win this campaign and stop the urban boundary expansion. So that's the meeting that we have in front of us. And just before I turn this back to Linda to introduce the first speaker, I always like to know if we're at the same meeting. So if I'd like to either put thumbs up with the, you can test using your reaction buttons at the bottom of the screen with a thumbs up, or you can put a note in the chat box saying, yes, this is a meeting you plan to be at. And Linda, over to you to introduce our first speaker.
Thanks so much, Mike. So I'm really excited to introduce Nancy Hurst to all of you. And for those who don't know Nancy, she's a networker extraordinaire. She's probably one of the most passionate people I know when it comes to fighting to save farmland and to build a sustainable community. Nancy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Linda. And firstly, please, thank you, Linda and Dawn and Mike and all of these people who's fought this issue for so much longer than before we came on the scene. You guys are the leaders in all this, really. But thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. I'm Nancy from the citizen group Stop Sprawl Ham-ont, and we are a grassroots organization of concerned citizens from across the city who have come together with the common goal of stopping Hamilton's proposed urban boundary expansion. This expansion would grab thousands of acres of productive agricultural land, wetlands, and wildlife habitats surrounding Hamilton and convert it to urban use. If you can move on to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. This is a map of what our campaign is trying to save. These areas in white, except for the land surrounding the airport, are called the White Belt lands. And this is the land at risk of being paved over for subdivisions. City staff is recommending that council approve a plan to convert 84% of these White Belt areas to suburbia, and it'll amount to 3,300 acres of farmland all across Hamilton Mountain. Next slide, please. The largest parcel is Elfrida. It's 3,100 acres in size, and it's 6 kilometers long at its southern border. That's half the length of the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. Altogether, the White Belt land area is massive, and it's all on the chopping block. Next slide, please. In January of 2021, City of Hamilton did online public outreach about the boundary expansion. And the only two options in their initial survey were Sprawl Max and Sprawl Supermax. And as you can see, only 150 people from the entire city responded to that survey, from the graph on the right there, on the left, sorry. And more importantly, only 4 people in the entire city under the age of 24 were among them. And it's young people who will bear the burden of land use decisions that we make today. And I believe that the city needs to hear from a heck of a lot more than 150 people about this by the end of the survey date, which is July 23rd. And you can take the slides down now, thanks. 2 weeks ago, the city sent an email or sent a mail out survey to homes in Hamilton. A lot of people never received that survey, and many of them were tossed in the blue bin because it resembled a company flyer. So our group's immediate goal is to spread the word about the survey and the deadline of July 23rd to as many residents of Hamilton as we can in the next 8 days. So far, we've delivered almost 1,500 yard signs around town. Requests are pouring in daily. The survey closes, as I said, in 8 days, and council will be voting in October on the final plan of the preferred growth option. That means we've got just a week to advertise, buy signs, and do whatever we can to get the word out to Hamilton citizens to choose option 2, no boundary expansion. So I thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy. And I think what Nancy shared is that we're a movement. I mean, we are mobilized, things are happening. So thank you for setting the stage, Nancy, with those details. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Chris Kruger. And Chris is a local farmer. He and his family run Manor Run Farm. He's also the president of Local 351 of the National Farmers Union. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for the chance to speak and to the great work of the organizing committee. My great-grandfather was a tailor and he lived in Hamilton. My wife's uncle, who's 93, was at the Stelco steelworker strike 75 years ago. Hamilton has a rich history of doing and of making and of political action. And I know that we can influence council and we can get them to make the right decision. That's the critical task that we have in front of us. I've been with my family here in Ancaster farming for 25 years, and we've learned a couple things. One of them is that eating healthy food makes you healthy. And local food is the healthiest food to eat. And if you pave over that land, you can't have local food. We're also experiencing the worst health crisis that we have ever experienced. And that's been partly caused by a loss of local food over the last 50, 60, 70 years. There was a time when Hamilton fed itself, when the Hamilton Farmers Market was directly under City Council. And it was a vibrant place where people got their food. Food is delivered to us differently now, and we still have an opportunity to begin to feed ourselves and to have local food and be healthier. So I don't think we can disconnect what's happening around COVID from the decisions that council makes and the decisions that we as citizens make. The other thing that's very clear to me is that we're experiencing a housing crisis and a land price crisis, where prices are out of control and we're beginning to see tent cities outside. I would like us to see City Hall Council invest in the downtown, use the brownfields, and make a place for everybody. Allow people to begin to participate in our economy like we did 50 years ago. I just drove up to deliver vegetables to the corner of Rymel Road and Highway 20. And so that's right beside where they're planning to develop Elfrida. And I saw what they meant by development. I saw the type of housing and I saw the big box stores. I didn't see a diverse economy. I didn't see a place where people could make things. And I think that's the difference, is that sprawl will just allow us and allow large companies to continue to suck money out of our community. But having a rich, vibrant, diversified urban core is really what we should be looking towards. And I know that Hamilton is the capital, the donut capital of the world, but we don't need a donut development process. And I don't know if everyone's aware of that, but the idea that we have a rich outer core that's donut and we have a center that's hollow. We really need to invest in our center. So thank you. And I think it's going to be successful. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that really important message. So it's now my pleasure to introduce to all of you Dr. Megan Davis, and she's a leader with Green Initiative. And this is a fantastic effort. It's an initiative of the Hamilton Family Health Team, and it's focused on reducing environmental impacts generated by the primary care system and encouraging more environmental action by communicating the link between healthcare and climate change. Welcome, Dr. Davis. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. As Linda said, I'm a family doc, and I've been here in Hamilton practicing and living for 25 years. And my Green Initiative is to try and reduce the footprint of healthcare, which is pretty significant. So, as a doc, my responsibility is to serve the individuals and families and to identify and address their immediate healthcare needs. But I think it's really important to speak up about upstream causes of illness and that I witness, and to intervene on things that can damage people's health. So that's why I'm here today. And I have three health concerns about expanding Hamilton's urban boundaries. Firstly, urban sprawl has been linked to a sedentary lifestyle with less physical activity, higher rates of obesity, and those lead to heart disease, diabetes, arthritis, and some cancers. And secondly, the additional effects of expanding our urban boundaries is because how we use our land, it determines how we use our cars. And when you expand urban boundaries, it leads to more driving. More driving is just bad for us. So more collisions, more injuries, more deaths, and definitely poor air quality. And then lastly, urban sprawl leads to increased greenhouse gas emissions, and a quarter of our greenhouse gases in Canada are already from transportation. So in my line of business, it's health is the most important thing. And I think we've all seen that through the pandemic, that health is a core value for every single one of us. So expanding our urban boundaries will undoubtedly worsen our health. And what's the flip side of that? What do we get when we vote option 2? We get this great opportunity to create walkable neighborhoods with a higher quality of life, a smaller carbon footprint, less driving, and better health. So vote option 2 for better health.
Thanks, Dr. Davis. That sounds fantastic to me. Option 2 it is. You didn't have to convince me. So I understand Dr. Sachs is now ready to go. So we'll hand it over to her.
Yes, well, absolutely. You all know, I think, that we are in a desperate climate crisis. And if you didn't know, just, check the newspaper. We are in for very big changes no matter what we do. But it's not too late to avoid the worst if we act right now. We're really up against it. And in Ontario, land use is our oil sands. Land use is the largest driver of our climate pollution. It's the largest driver of our environmental destruction. It is the largest factor locking us into a future that we and our children will not be able to stand. I wrote a report on this, the very last report that I released 2 days before my office was abolished. Happy, Healthy, Prosperous Ontario. I put the address in the chat. It's available on my campaign website, votefordiane.ca. And chapter 4 was all about sprawl and how disastrously bad it is. And it's bad for practically everything. It's bad for the people involved. It's the reason that the largest source of climate pollution in Ontario is people driving around. It's not industry. And Ontarians drive more and more and more than ever before. And we do it because of sprawl. We do it also in the most polluting cars. in filthy air from tailpipe emissions directly affects people's health. We have in the Greater Toronto Area, as a result of all this sprawl, already the worst congestion in North America, worse than Los Angeles, worse than New York City. And we are on track to make it much, much, much worse because we're expecting to increase the population nearly 40% in the less than the next 20 years. And all those people are being piled out mostly into the suburbs, which is going to make more and more sprawl. Sprawl has huge financial costs. People wonder, why are your taxes so high? Your taxes are so high because of sprawl. Sprawl has very high infrastructure costs, it has high policing costs, it has high stormwater management costs, and those costs are going to keep growing up because the way municipalities have been financed, they are almost forced to keep approving more and more sprawl to get upfront money to try to catch up from what the sprawl they had before. It has an enormously long-lasting carbon footprint. Once you destroy soil, it takes thousands of years to get it back. Destroying woodlands and wetlands, these are our biggest protection against the hammer blows of climate change. One of the first things that we're going to experience is floods and droughts. And the average family, a basement flood costs about $40,000. Most people don't have $40,000 sitting around. You can lose your house if you get a basement flood, and more people can't get insurance coverage for it, and insurance coverage is getting more and more expensive. And what causes urban flooding? Well, there's three big things: climate change, sprawl, and outdated infrastructure. And we've got all three of those in Ontario, and they're all getting worse. So we have the worst congestion. We're setting ourselves up for the worst flooding. We're losing the wetlands that clean our water and provide habitat for the creatures that we love. And this is being done on purpose, turbocharged by the Ford government so that their rich developer friends can make big profits in the short run, and all the rest of us will suffer for all the rest of our lives. Councils do listen to people speaking up. Sign up, speak up for option 2, and get more people, right? Go to your mom's book club, go to your bowling club, go to your church, go to anybody you know. Don't be shy about this. This is existential stuff. We're in a really deep hole. The first thing you have to do when you need to get out of a hole is to stop digging. Sprawl is digging. So this is the moment to use all your chops, give up being shy, get more people to speak up and tell your story, just the way Dr. Davis does. What she says is powerful, and it's partly because of her that the option 2 is even on the list of possibilities. Individuals speaking up makes a difference. Speak up, get your friends to speak up, get your kids to speak up. Everybody needs to speak up. It's the only thing that's going to make a difference. You want to read the report, please do. There's more stats and things in there. Happy, Healthy, Prosperous Ontario. It's on my website, votefordiane.ca. Thank you, everybody, for organizing this. Linda, you're always a rock star. And Nancy, and well done, everyone. This really matters.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sachs. And I love that. Get out there and use your chops, people. We've got a future to fight for and the public good to fight for. So thank you so much for those inspirational words. It's wonderful. So I'm really pleased now to introduce our next speaker, and that's MPP Sandy Shaw. And Sandy is the MPP for HWAD, which is Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas. She's also now the environment critic for the official opposition, which I think is really exciting because Sandy is a crusader for the environment. So it just seems so appropriate that she's here with us tonight to say a few words. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Linda. First of all, I just have to say how fantastic it is to see so many people, hundreds of people on this call. It's an incredible event, and a credit to all of the organizers. And so, yes, I am the environment critic. It's been quite an interesting time, hasn't it, to be the environment critic in this with this Ford government. You know, I don't think any of us are surprised by this sort of anti-environment, pro-development agenda of this government. I think we might have been surprised by the speed, or as Diane said, the supercharged, aggressive way in which they've gone to assaulting the government. And, the list goes on and on, but let's start with, this is the government that cut the Ministry of Environment funding. They kneecapped the Conservation Authority's ability to protect our watershed. They have resurrected the Highway 413, which was mothballed, the disastrous highway, cut through the Greenbelt, cut through farmlands. They're going ahead with the Bradford bypass, which will bisect the Holland Marsh, some of the most fertile farmland that we have in the province. And now we're faced with this forced urban boundary expansion. And I mean, it has been dizzying for people to try and respond, and we have the government that has been issuing MZOs, which are ministerial zoning orders at like record pace, which overrides good planning, overrides watershed management. And why are they doing all this? And we know why they're doing all of this, because it serves and allows them to take what's held in trust, public land that should be held as a public trust, or land that should be held as a natural heritage and something that we should be stewards of. They are taking that wholesale and they're selling it off to their insiders, their developers, and their donors. And that is not rhetoric, it's a matter of fact. You can just draw the connections to who they're giving this land to. But what I have to say that this event is giving me is hope, because I see so many people here. They say hope springs eternal. It's kind of like the signs that are springing up all over the neighborhood in my community. And I'm so happy to see that you have been able to make people understand the connection between urban boundary expansion and the Ford agenda. So we all understand what's at risk. We know that this is the greatest climate decision that we are faced with. We know that, but we also understand the reason why this government's doing it. A lot of people ask me, they say, why does Doug Ford hate the environment so much? And I say, I don't think he hates the environment. It just happens to be in the way of what he's trying to do to develop everything, no matter the cost. And so an event like this, it's so incredible to see so many people, because what we have seen when everybody's sort of been able to stop reeling from the assault from this government, people have been able to organize locally and they've been able to fight back. So we have seen, the attempt to use an MZO to pave over a wetland in Duffins Creek. The government had to step back from that. We saw in Stratford when they used an MZO to put a plant that the communities didn't want, they had to step back from that. We now thankfully have a federal environmental assessment for the Highway 413. Even here locally in Hamilton, I mean, the fantastic work that the community did to stop a developer from paving over an Ancaster wetland. These are the kinds of successes that are inspiring. And it just tells us that when we organize, when we speak up, and when we fight back, we can win. And, I just have to say on a personal note, if you'll indulge me a little bit, I'm a grandmother, and my grandson, Hawk, said to me one time with tears in his eyes, he said, Nan, will there be nature when I grow up? And I just thought, how hideous is it that a 7-year-old is worried about this, that should not be something that this is a young person is worrying about. It should be that the adults are protecting the natural environment for future generations. And that's what an event like this tonight will do. I just want to, again, if you'll indulge me one more time, I'm reading a book called Land, and the subtitle is How the Hunger for Ownership Shaped the Modern World. And a really quick quote says, and I'll read it to you, "The law locks up the man or woman who steals the goose from off the common, but lets the greater villain loose who steals the common from the goose." And I love this because it helps to understand that the common things that we should be communally protecting need to be protected. And that I know in my role as a critic of the opposition and Ontario's new Democratic official opposition for the province, we hold this government to account. We are going to hold this government account when it comes to this forced urban boundary expansion and their sketchy growth numbers that we have questions about. And I know with folks like the leadership that we have in this room, and I know all of us doing our part, that we will be successful in this. And I'm so happy and so proud to be a Hamiltonian. And I'm I don't know what the word is, like relieved, I suppose, and grateful that we've got to this point, because I believe that, as has been said before, that if we speak up, council will listen, and we can teach other communities across the province what's at stake. So thank you once again for having me and hosting this, and just congratulations to all of us.
Thank you so much, Sandy. And I think I really appreciate you framing it through the eyes of your grandson. Let's fight to have, farmland and nature for our future generations to enjoy. And I think it's a really appropriate transition because our next speaker is Aki Ork, and Aki lives in Ward 3, and he has shared with passion, I've heard him do this, his concerns about the challenges in urban Hamilton. So I know he's been very active as a youth activist in the battle in drawing the connections between urban and rural and the need to protect rural to also help build up and make better, more complete urban communities. So welcome, Aki, and over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Akira Arik, and I live in Ward 3. You can call me Aki. I'm a horticultural student and very passionate about the environment and my community. I'm so happy to see so many people here today who care about our city and our planet. It was a few months ago that by chance, when a friend pulled me over, I started working with the Stop Sprawl group. And in my time working here alongside the others, I have seen people so passionate and so driven to protect the natural and farming land. I've seen youth members of this team stay up late into the night researching and planning and coordinating. I've seen older members not only do this, but actively encourage and nurture us youth. This is the kind of community that I grew up with and the kind of community that I love. Working with others to protect and care for the earth reminds us that we are also caring for each other. We're caring for everyone, for people we don't even know yet who will come after us. This kind of care made it easy for me to start working with the team. There was no hesitation or disrespect or distrust of my lived experience and knowledge despite my young age. I was welcomed, and you are welcomed. Being in community and fighting in community for what's right is a fire that burns inside each and every one of our hearts. That fire doesn't die even when it's 3 in the morning and you're digging through 200-page documents for even a sliver of useful information. It doesn't die when you're in the wetlands picking ticks off your legs in the hot sun as you survey the land. And it burns brighter when we are together, or when we speak to farmers, or when we speak to random people on the street whom we become connected to through our simple cause of environmental protection. This fire keeps our movement alive. We have the momentum, we have the passion, we have the numbers, and we have that fire. The Ancaster wetlands were saved, and the White Belt will be protected. We cannot stop, and we will not stop until all of the land is safe. Together we can do this as a community. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Aki, and thank you for saying that with such conviction. I think that's really important that we go out there as community members with confidence in pushing for the change that we want to see. Next on our list of speakers is Sarah Jama, and I have to say, Sarah is courageous and brave. I have to describe her that way. And she's courageous and brave when it matters most. And she reminds all of us with passion and strength why building a city that is inclusive and tolerant is so incredibly important. So Sarah, just a little bit more details about her. She's a community organizer here in Hamilton, and she's the co-founder of the Disability Justice Network of Ontario. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, everyone. It's been a while since I've done public speaking, so I'm actually a little bit nervous, so I wrote a script. Firstly, I want to state that the Stop the Sprawl campaign has got to be one of the best intergenerationally run and consistent campaigns in Hamilton that I've seen. I'm super excited to bear witness to a lot of the great work being done here locally to protect our farmlands and freeze the urban boundary on a local level. We know that we're in the middle of a climate crisis, that Florida will be underwater soon, and that in many ways, though we'll face the impacts here, Canada will be considered a safe haven from some of the major impacts of the climate crisis. We know that in response to the climate crisis, millions of people will continue to be displaced from their homes, and that those closest to the equator will face death and destruction. We aren't equipped with the leadership needed to take care of people here or abroad. In BC, for example, the Premier's response to the heat waves and fires that killed hundreds of people was that death of the disabled and the elderly were inevitable. We've heard this before. And across the country, elected officials continue to argue for the right to continue to preserve gas and oil companies instead of providing what it is that folks need to survive: pharmacare, housing, and hope. In fact, in the lead up to the last federal election, I recall some xenophobic ultra-right-wing candidates who were preoccupied with the language of who has the right to access services, arguing that folks should only access services in the places listed on their birth certificates. We are not prepared in our language and in our practice for what is to come and how to take care of our communities. And here locally, there's a serious fight to protect farmland from greedy developers and self-serving elected people. Farmland has to continue to be protected, but protection of farmland alone will not stop the displacement of our people. To do that, we must also imagine the possibility of the impossible. What would it mean to demand that farmland must be protected and that housing is a human right? What would it mean to demand that we protect local food and make food truly accessible? What would it mean to move away from the language of affordability, which has been utterly co-opted, and move toward demanding free housing? Because the increased density downtown could potentially still be on the backs of those without roofs, those who are living in tents, and the encampment problem is going to get worse within the next year alone. What would it mean to demand that instead of increased density, we get rid of wasteful density? That the condos that none of us can actually afford come down? If the master's house cannot be dismantled using the master's tools, then we must refuse to use the language of affordability around housing. Condos must come down and housing should be free. Protect the urban boundary, protect farmland, dismantle wasteful density, and build free housing for those who need it in our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for that important message. Absolutely. Our next speaker tonight is Seth Klein, and Seth is the director of the Climate Emergency Unit. Prior to that, he served for 22 years as BC director of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. He's the author of A Good War: Mobilizing Canada for the Climate Emergency, and Seth writes a regular column for the National Observer. Welcome, Seth.
Thank you. Hello, friends. And thank you so much for lending your support to this important campaign. Congrats and thanks to all the good folks who are leading this effort and organizing this event to protect farmland from development and urban sprawl in Ontario. I'm joining you with gratitude from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, otherwise known as Vancouver. And building on Summer's lovely opening, let's start with that reminder that in an era when we are all coming to terms with some of the ugly and racist legacy of Canada's development and newly understanding the connections between the residential schools and the state's attempt to extinguish future claims to stolen land, and starting to think about what land back to Indigenous nations should actually mean and look like, now is precisely when it makes sense to hit pause on new land developments and to think about who and how decisions should be made about those lands. Friends, urban planning and land use, they might sound like the domain of policy wonks. It often gets talked about in ways that sound very boring and esoteric. But as so many of the previous speakers have said, I am here to assure you that at a time when more and more of us are understanding the true scope of the climate emergency we confront, and let me tell you, here in British Columbia, we are having a summer in which that emergency is well and truly upon us. Urban planning and land use is an urgent climate issue. Increasing urban sprawl is a climate disaster. It means bigger houses with higher GHGs. It means more individualized travel and private automobiles, as Megan and Diane have said. It means more paved areas absorbing heat. It means less land available to naturally sequester carbon. And in an era when global food systems will increasingly be disrupted and when global transportation of food, as Chris said, needs to be increasingly replaced with local resiliency and capacity, now is exactly when we don't want to be losing precious local farmland. That land needs to be urgently protected. Here in my province, farmland has been protected from development by the agricultural land reserve policy that has secured farmland since it was introduced by the Dave Barrett NDP government in the early 1970s. Those are the kinds of policies that we need. And as we confront the climate emergency, we need to be approaching urban planning and design through the lens of that emergency. And that means rather than more sprawl, what we need are more dense, complete communities. And by complete communities, I mean neighborhoods where everything you need, truly affordable housing, your work, leisure space, childcare, community amenities, shopping and services are all within an easy walk or roll, and where the density allows for a ready and affordable public transit, and where you know your neighbors because you walk past their homes every day, and where public space isn't consumed by the private automobile, but by trees and parks and public patio spaces. That's the good life that we need to fight for. So thanks for everything you're doing. I wish you victory in this struggle. Keep up the pressure, keep fighting for that livable future and beautiful neighborhoods. Defend your precious farmland. Don't let the developer interests gobble it up. Onward, friends.
Thank you so much, Seth, for that inspirational vision of the future that we all need to be fighting for. That was fantastic. Next on our list, I'm really pleased to introduce to everyone Skylar Williams. And Skylar is Mohawk. He's from Six Nations, and he's the spokesperson for the 1492 Land Back Lane Reclamation Camp in Caledonia. Welcome, Skylar.
Hello, everybody. And I really want to say a big thank you to everybody that has invited me out to this, and all of the people that are on this. I know I've seen the 500 people that RSVP'd, and it really brings some joy to my heart to see that all these people are looking to see what they can do to stop this development, to stop covering everything in concrete and asphalt for the name of progress here. You know, like this, certainly for our community at Six Nations, you know, like this is not what progress looks like. And so, you know, it is quite a gift for us to know that, you know, we aren't the only people that are looking to see, you know, these massive developers come in with their, you know, machines to bulldoze every blade of grass, every tree, every shrub, everything that makes, you know, our Mother Earth beautiful, you know, to continue to plow all that under, to make way for these, you know, cookie cutter houses to continue to mark up our horizons. And so, you know what, if these developers continue to push on to see that development happen without the consent of the people that are living there, you know, you are going to start to see those people stick together, and they're going to start to unite. And people, like we did here in Six Nations, that bit of unity between all our people, you know, like we wouldn't be here. You know, today is 3 days shy of 365 days at Land Back Lane. And you know what, it takes a bit of sacrifice and it takes a bit of time. But you know what, when people stick together and people are able to keep pushing, keep lifting each other up, you know, like the heights are, you know, it can't be measured. And so when I hear people like the Aki that was talking just before us, you know, that really lifts me up to remind me that you know, there's another generation of young people that are coming up behind us that aren't going to settle, you know, like, because this is borrowed lands. You know, we talk about that and in our ways around, you know, these lands, they're not ours. You know, these lands are borrowed from the next generations. And so if we cover everything in concrete and asphalt and put up these cookie cutter houses and make it so that, you know, there's no place for the deer, the foxes, the wild turkeys, you know, everything that makes our Mother Earth beautiful, you know, that then, you know, we're quite a bit lost. And so I really, you know, am quite excited to hear the work that you guys are doing and to see if we can, you know, push forward to be able to say, you know what, whether it's people in Hamilton and Ancaster and those farming communities, to start to work with the Indigenous people of Six Nations to be able to really push back to say absolutely not. You know what, come to Six Nations, come on down to Land Back Lane, and you know, we're gonna keep pushing forward, and we're gonna keep working together, because together there's nothing that we can't do. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, Skylar. That's a great message. Together, there's nothing that we can't do. I think that's really important for us all to think about moving forward. How do we start to come together and work to push for a different vision of the world and a different vision of our communities moving forward? Absolutely. The next speaker on our list is Jackson Hudecki, and Jackson's a local naturalist, and he works as the Special Programs Coordinator at the Royal Botanical Gardens. He's also a member of the board of the Hamilton Naturalist Club, and he's the club's bird studies group director. Welcome, Jackson.
Thank you so much for having me, Linda, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. I can't believe I'm following Skylar. I can't believe I'm in a room with such courageous people. I've been observing and listening and watching and feeling empowered by so much of the work that is happening around these lands. So thank you once again for having me here. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. If we haven't met before, my last name, Hudecki, is somewhat known in the city of Hamilton. My grandfather was an orthopedic surgeon. My father was a teacher, and my mother was a nurse. And growing up, you know, we didn't have a ton of traditions. And when I look back on my childhood, and I think about some of the fun I had, a lot of it was spent outside. But as I grew up, I didn't know what I needed to be or what I should be. And in thinking about what some of my family members were doing, they focused on care. They focused on healthcare and childcare. And I knew I wanted to kind of do something similar, but I didn't know what necessarily. And I didn't even know I could focus a career on working in the outdoors and working and learning about all that Mother Earth has around us and what it grows and the life that she harbors. And when I learned that I could get into this world, I dove in head first, and I've been in it for the last 15 years. And I work a lot with youth. I work a lot with children, youth, people of all ages. And it's, again, that same empowering feeling that Skylar was just talking about and hearing from folks like Aki and Sarah and Summer. Even during our 1 minute of silence, I could hear my own children playing downstairs. And listening to their voices as they're playing was a powerful moment in that moment of silence, and thinking about the children that didn't get a chance to grow up on these lands, on their lands. And I feel that we all have this duty, and talking about borrowing, you know, this earth from the future is so true. I was lost for a while because I felt alone. I felt like there weren't enough of me in, you know, the early 2000s, you know, before the internet was what it is now. And I felt that there weren't many more like me until I got into and learned more about the community organizations and learning and hearing from the grassroots movements. And that was so powerful and so strong. And that then uplifted me, and I didn't feel alone anymore. And I knew that there were more like me, and coming from much longer before me, generations before me, people in this room with us now, and it's such a great feeling. But sometimes it can feel hopeless. Sometimes it can feel like the cards are stacked against us. But being in this room together, 164 of us in this room, and perhaps those watching at home, we're in this for the greater good. We're in this together. There are lots of us that think this and feel this, and so I feel empowered by all of this, and it just keeps us moving forth, keeps me moving forth, and it keeps me wanting to do more and to contribute more and to connect more and to learn more. This life is so amazing that we get to learn every day. We learn something new every single day. So of course I do not want to promote urban sprawl. We need as much food, water, shelter, air, space, soil as possible forevermore. And decisions that are made now will affect what happens in the future. And I'm preaching, you know, to the choir here. You're here because you know that, and it's up to us to just keep that grassroots movement going forth. So I'll pass it on to the next group of people. But thank you so much for having me, and let's keep this going.
Thank you so much, Jackson. And I love that whole idea of the energy in the virtual room, and generations of us been thinking about the future, but also recognizing that we're growing, right? This is a movement. There's momentum. And I think we all realize that now it's become essential that we come together and we move forward together. So thank you for sharing that message. Next on our list of speakers is Tim Gray, and Tim is the Executive Director of Environmental Defense. And I have to say, he's there right now in his organization with Tim in the leadership role. is doing really important work, helping community activists across the greater Golden Horseshoe, including all of us here, to fight the big sprawl. And that's what Edie calls it. And I think that's the way we do need to frame it. So thank you for that, Tim, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Linda, and good evening, Hamilton. So great to see everyone here and all the great speakers. Aki, if you decide that horticulture, it's a great area to study, but if you want a job, just give me a call. Just give me a call. Fantastic. Yeah, Ontario is under attack. It's been under attack for 3 years. You name the piece of environmental protection legislation, and I can tell you what's been changed about it and why it's been made worse. But we're fighting back. The people of Ontario are fighting back. Doug Ford tried to open up the Greenbelt for his developer friends, and they introduced legislation to try and do that. And it's called Bill 66. And we all came together and we stopped it. They tried to build an Amazon warehouse in a provincially significant wetland in Pickering. And together we stopped it. They tried to fast track a new 4-lane highway going from Highway 400 over to Milton through some of the best remaining farmland in the Greenbelt north of Brampton. And we got the federal government interested in stopping it. Why was that? Because every single municipal council along that highway voted to support a federal environmental assessment. And why was that? Not just because they decided to, because they get lots of conversation and lobbying from developers, but because the people in their community came out and demanded it. And as soon as the federal government saw that great political opportunity to side with all those mayors and councils in the lead up to a federal election, guess what? They suddenly thought it was great time to designate it for a federal environmental assessment. So we can actually make a difference. And all of the folks here tonight, they've told you what the values at stake are around Hamilton if this boundary is allowed to expand. This will be the last of the farmland that's not currently protected by the Greenbelt. And so when it's gone, the developers will be back for the Greenbelt. They will not stop. They'll now have an argument saying, oh, well, we've already had all the land given to us, all the farmland given to us outside of the Greenbelt. Now we want the Greenbelt lands too. And so they'll be lined up for that. It's going to mean less ability to transform the existing city of Hamilton in the ways that all of you want to see that transformed. More housing that people can afford, more transit that is appropriate to getting around without cars or allowing people to walk or cycle. More investment in the kind of city that Hamilton wants to be. And it's a great city. I've spent a lot of time there. My partner went to McMaster. I love the city. And I just think it has massive potential. And that does not include gobbling up the remaining farmland, encouraging sprawl, and cutting off the money supply necessary to revitalize a fantastic urban core to a great city. So we can fight back. You can fight back. There's no reason that the rules the province have laid down that encourage this sprawl can't be resisted by your city council. They have the option of coming up with an approach to their new official plan that doesn't expand the boundary. And your city can fight for it, and you can create the expectation that that's what they're going to do. You can create a future that includes affordable housing, parks, transit, and you can demand that of your council. And you can make sure that this July 23rd, becomes the day that everyone talks about, that the corner was turned, Hamilton decided to grow inward and better instead of sprawling and eating up more farmland. Let's work together, make sure thousands and thousands of people respond by that deadline, and that we move forward from here, and that by the time we get to the completed official plan for the city of Hamilton, it's one that all of you and all of us across the province can be proud of, and we'll have yet won another battle in the war to turn this around against the Ford government. Thank you so much. This has been a great night, and I'm really, really looking forward to the next steps to make all of this possible.
Thank you, Tim. I feel like I need to say woohoo at this point. You can fight City Hall, you can fight Queen's Park, you can demand that our council does the right thing for this community and what's good for the common good, for the public good. So thank you for those inspiring words, and we do need to fight, and I agree we can win. We're winning so far, I would argue. We're making progress on on this effort. So thank you for that. Next on our agenda tonight, I'm really pleased to introduce NDP MP Matthew Green. Matthew is the Member of Parliament for Hamilton Centre, and prior to this, he served on Hamilton City Council representing Ward 3 for the 2014 to 2018 term. And I have to say, I've known and worked with Matthew since even before he was a city councillor, and I have to say, that Matthew gets it. He understands what the issues are. He understands what needs to be done to build a sustainable, climate resilient, inclusive city. And he knows that community has the power to make that happen. So welcome, Matthew.
Linda, how much time are you going to give me here? I need to know because I'm fired up and I need to know when I got my timer on. I'm ready to go. We're ready to talk about winning. So what do you got for me here? 3 minutes?
Wait, can you get the revolution going in
revolution
4 or
is
5
already
minutes?
begun. The revolution
I know.
is in the room.
Add some
the
fuel to that
revolution
fire.
is you know, it's Don McLean, it's Marlene Thomas, it's all the incredible people that are here today. And we just picked up from Tim. We heard about winning. You know, we've heard from Skylar, who explained in so many important ways why having Indigenous-led climate justice be at the forefront of our just transition. What Skylar didn't share with everybody is the fact that his direct action, the community, the clan mothers, the land defenders took back this land and won in the face of all the odds, in the face of direct police brutality, in the face of a occupation of the OPP. They dug in and they won. And I have to say, you know, in my time at City Council, I learned some lessons. And every single time the community tries to dig in and fight against the moneyed interests, we hear this mythology, this idea that it's already a done deal, that there's nothing we can do, the language of estrangement and disempowerment that is used to put people in a place of feeling like there's nothing they can do to make a difference. And I have to share with you that my short time in politics, you know, I've learned the lesson of the Wizard of Oz, the machinery that every single time when we're up against them, they say this is a multi-million-dollar deal, $100 million deal, a $200 million deal, that at every single turn, we learn the lessons of the Wizard of Oz. We get down the yellow brick railroad and we pull back that veil. And what do we see? We see a small man who says, pay no attention to the man behind the veil. What else do we learn? Well, sometimes decisions are made in 3 ways: no heart, no brains, and no courage. And I'm here to share with you that at local governments, at provincial governments, and at federal governments, there isn't leadership. There's leadership right here. This is where the leadership is going to come from to turn back the moneyed interests of the Ontario Chamber of Commerce, which, by the way, writes the playbook for this provincial Conservative government. And that at City Hall, there is no other place where at the stroke of a pen, agricultural land at thousands of dollars an acre can immediately turn into residential land at millions of dollars an acre. At the stroke of a pen, millionaires are made on these decisions. That's why they're afraid of your organizing power. That's why they're trying to do everything they can, include creating these faulty push-pulls, this idea of ambitious expansion. This is a symptom. This is not just a symptom of bad planning. This is an ongoing symptom of extractionary capitalism that at absolutely every twist and turn will try to suck the value out of absolutely everything we have, commodify every aspect of our life. We watched it when the provincial Liberal government did the Greenbelt Review. I'm proud to say that as a city councillor, I voted against every site-specific exemption, but they still left it up to municipalities. That no level of government over the last 25 years has had the courage to put a hard stop on this idea of infinite expansion, where you too can get into these sometimes gated communities at the low 500,000s. We're talking about an economic segregation where we spend all of our resources as local municipalities expanding into communities where we will never make that money back. Infrastructure, roads, policing, fire, all of that stuff goes out and the tax base never offsets those costs. We're in a city that still has two-tier tax systems. They want it all. They want the infinite expansion. They want the top of the line everything in their suburban, gated economic communities. And yet when we try to find, a just transition in Hamilton with sustainable urban transit, we have people who are up in arms. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you absolutely have the ability to come together as a community. 158 people on this call, led by intergenerational leaders, people who have been, on the front lines of the Red Hill Valley, on the front lines of the garbage incinerator that was supposed to come in Hamilton, the casino they wanted to dump downtown. It is time for us to take back our democracy in a meaningful way. It starts with these wins. It continues with these wins. And I have to tell you that you can absolutely make a difference. I am a testament to that. I came from the outside in the activist world, and I was tired of going to council, hat in hand, asking them to do the right thing. If there's one thing this city council has taught us, is that they are unwilling to do the right and moral thing. That we must demand for it, that they will not share their power, and that we absolutely must take it. So it has to be a hard stop. We are at a precipice. The world is on fire. We will see more floods. This is a reality. Anybody who wants to deny that for the sake of profits is actually involved in what, my opinion, in a form of social murder, a social mortgaging of the future of these generations for people who are making decisions that won't even be around to see it. Shame on them. And a deep thanks and gratitude to all of you who made this your priority to be here tonight. And if you're a developer who happened to jump on this call, who want to get a sense for what was about to come your way, I need you to know this, that our land will not be bought and sold for you, and that we will make decisions within our communities. And I have to say, as coming on here and close, if we don't center Indigenous justice and Indigenous land stewardship, if we don't recognize the moratorium called by the Haudenosaunee Confederacy Council, if we don't honor our treaties in this moment, that's on all of us. We're all treaty people on these lands. And so with that being said, I can't tell you how excited and grateful I am to see all these amazing people on this call. Scott, I look forward to hopefully seeing you on Monday. My brother, make sure when you tell that story, you remind everybody that not only did you take the land back, but you also won. The developer pulled up stakes because they know that in the face of that kind of resistance and resilience, that they cannot win. And that's a lesson for all of us, our farmers, people living in the inner cities, the suburbs, and everything else. It's not a question of who we're governing for. It's a question of how we're governing in this city. And we have to start with the people who are already here. Thank you so much for everybody who's online today. Make sure you're calling yourself into action, and make sure you're calling your friends and your neighbors into action right along with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Wow, that was the note that we needed to end our list of speakers on. Really appreciate your strong and powerful message to everyone. And thank you too to all of our other speakers tonight. So Mike, there you are. Hello.
Linda, I've been in, I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been in my own imaginary room with all of you. And I've heard people say 157 participants, etc. But I just want to tell everybody that's the number of devices. And I'm just going to be all nerdy with you for a second. We know that there've been, over the course of this meeting, more than 250 devices with more than one person watching. So there have been hundreds of people in this virtual room with us. And I've just been feeling it, feeling the energy grow the whole night. I mean, I've said some things in the chat box, but lots of people have said things in the chat box. So I really hope you're looking there, and I hope our speakers are looking there to see the love that's being shown to you and the energy. And I just felt the whole place shake there with you at the end, Matthew, and it was built up to us by Skylar and everybody else who took us to that place. And one of the things that I think was really resonated for me, Matthew, is when you said, we are the leadership. This is the movement, and leadership is different now. We don't rely on, we can't rely on, we shouldn't rely on I think you said little men hiding behind curtains, pulling on knobs. You know, these are not the people who are they're providing leadership for a world that will devour our future. And I don't want to say much more because it's been said so much more eloquently. It's leadership from us, from everybody who's here, that's going to create a world that we can live in, and we'll be here for next generations. So I'm really just so filled with love, actually, from what I've heard tonight, and appreciation for everybody who's in the room. And I think, Linda, now it's time for us to talk about how we take action and move forward. What are all of us as leaders going to do next?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to say here to the words that you just shared, Mike. Absolutely. Yeah. So now is the time to act. We've got to get out there and keep on with this effort. You all heard Nancy refer to the July 23rd deadline on this survey. It's really important that you get out there. You know, I've been saying, if any of you are as old as me, you may remember that old shampoo commercial, right? You tell two friends and tell them to tell two friends, and so on and so on. That's how we win. And that's what's already happening, but we need for more of that to happen. So look at even more ambitious. We're going to say, you tell 4 friends and they'll tell 4 friends. So we can make exponential growth here happen in getting people to complete that survey and choose option 2. Use the email tool to tell city staff what future you want to see in Hamilton. And don't forget too that every person in your household has the right to complete and return that survey, whether you were lucky enough to get one of the rare paper copies, or whether you do this by email. And maybe I should say, so people are aware, if you go, it's www.ssho.ca, and the SSHO is Stop Sprawl Ham Aunt, and that's where you can fill out the survey online. We've also got sorry, Mike.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, we've also got a great event happening next week, the day before, the 23rd. So on Thursday, the 22nd at 1:30 p.m. at Hamilton City Hall, we're asking people to come and come on down and join us to wave at cars, and we're going to keep it all safe from a pandemic point of view with proper social distancing. Bring your homemade sign, bring your no urban boundary expansion sign if you've got one on your lawn, if you don't want to have to make your own, but come on down and show your support for what we're trying to achieve here. And then of course, if you know someone who you think would like to donate to the campaign, there's an opportunity as well on the Stop Sprawl Hamont website to do that. And Mike, I know you're going to talk more about that.
We're going to talk
right
about
now.
opportunities right now.
Yeah.
And what I want to say is this: at the very beginning of the evening, Nancy Hurst spelled out for us the timeline. And folks, you know this: we're in a race, and we have to jump over some hurdles. And those hurdles are placed in your way to be obstacles for you. And I just think it's very important. What Matthew said was, it's not a done deal. It's never a done deal. And this is not a done deal. And Tim Gray was telling us about how they stopped the done deal in Duffins Creek, how they stopped the done deal with Highway 413, and the Water Watchers worked with people in Stratford to stop the Jingi glass plant and that MZO. And I'm going to sneak in here, folks, a little shout out to Jamie Gibb, who I saw on the participant list, who's watching tonight from Stratford and was one of the leaders in stopping that campaign. And it's never over till it's over, and this is not over. But there would be more obstacles put in front of you. And the first hurdle we have to clear, and I think you're going to clear it, but the first hurdle you have to clear is getting a profound statement from the community that they're opposed to this. And as Linda has just said, one of the very clear things you can go out tonight is reach out to people in your friends, your families, in your social networks. I saw somebody in the chat box say the word is being spread through churches in Dundas, for example. Whatever sports associations you belong to, whatever business associations, whatever Facebook groups, etc. Tonight, tomorrow, through the weekend, through the week, start spreading the word for people to pass that out, to make their submission. Now, you have a terrific grassroots campaign. There are hundreds of people involved. You've got terrific core leadership who's planning this campaign. There are several months until the final decision's made, and you're up against some very wealthy opponents. As I think it was Matthew who said, there are people who are going to make millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars perhaps, on the stroke of a pen of this decision. And so you're up against, the community's up against some very powerful interests. And your leadership group needs to know what they can plan to do. How many signs can they buy? How many leaflets can they print? How many leaflets can they send to people's homes? Can they afford to maybe rent a billboard or buy some radio ads or put some ads in the Spectator to reach out and organize more events with more people? And they need money to do that. In order to create a plan with confidence, we're going to ask you for some donations now. Now, we're going to ask you to make a pledge, and there's going to be some information put in the chat box, and there's maybe even a slide we're going to put up for just a minute that shows where you can make a donation. And the donation is to a place called the Small Change Fund, to a project where the money is reserved and dedicated to your Stopping Sprawl in Hamilton. And if you make a donation through the Small Change Fund, you will receive a charitable tax receipt for your donation. Now, this is easier to do in person than it is on Zoom land, but we're going to do it on Zoom land. And I'm going to be asking you to make a financial pledge. Now, I know some of you are eager to do that and want to rush right away and start to put that in the chat box, but I want you to just hold on for a second because I want to describe a couple of things to you about how we want to do this. So there's been, I think, 500 people or so in this meeting tonight. And if each of you donated on average $10, the group would have $5,000 to plan with. Now, $5,000 is a lot of money, and that would be a good thing to know. And if the average donation from 500 people was $100, if I've kept track of my decimal points right, then there'd be $50,000 that the group could have to plan their campaign with. There's a difference between how much in terms of communication, signs, leaflets, printing, etc., the campaign can plan for if they have 5,000 or if they have 50,000. So in a moment, I'm going to start at a number, and I'm going to ask who will make a pledge at that number. But what I have to tell you just before that is we had very exciting phone call just before this meeting where a donor who wishes to remain anonymous said that person will match the total donations that we raise tonight. So whatever gets pledged tonight will get doubled by this donor who's generous and committed to stopping sprawl. So in the spirit of all that, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to start with a number, and I'm going to ask if somebody will pledge that amount of money. And then I'm going to proceed from there. I'm going to proceed down, a little hint to you, but I'm going to proceed there. And we're going to see how much we can raise tonight and then know that we're going to double it. Now, the number I'm going to start with is $5,000. And I want to know if there's somebody in the audience tonight who will pledge $5,000 to support this campaign. Now, pledging it means that you can pay it in installments. You can pay it when you have it. And that's true for all the amounts that we're going to ask for pledges tonight. But that's the number we're going to start at. And here, if we were in a room all together, there'd be somebody who would be looking at somebody else next to them and saying, what do you think? Can we do that? And we'd be seeing that, we'd be feeling that. In Zoom land, there's a bit of a delay. So we have to wait because somebody's turning to somebody else, maybe in their household, and they're saying, what do you think? Should we pledge $5,000 to protect farmland forever, to stop the expansion of urban boundary, to build the Hamilton that we want, to resist this agenda of urban sprawl by a government and developers who want to devour our future? Is there somebody who would make a pledge of $5,000? Now, I know you're thinking about it, and I'm going to talk for another minute so we can see if somebody makes that pledge in the pledge box. And we know that that's not much at all for the developers to think about spending that kind of money. And I think I live I'm from out of town, but I've been hearing about some of the stories that the Home Builders Association, some of the ads they've been running, some of the things they've been putting in the paper, and we can't outspend them, but we can, your leadership group can run a more vigorous campaign if they have, with the biggest budget that they have. These are all David and Goliath struggles. The important thing about the David and Goliath struggle is that a good slingshot, a few smooth round pebbles, and a good aim can bring down Goliath. And that's what we're doing here. But we have to know how many slingshots can we organize? How many small round pebble stones can we pull together? So the chat box is the pledge box. And so I'm going to ask if there's someone who would like to make a pledge of $5,000 and to let us know in the chat box now. If we had a drum roll, if we had sound effects, we could do that. Yes, thank you. I just saw somebody, Cheryl Boblin, I just saw Cheryl do a simulated drum roll for us. All right, so there may be somebody out there who's still thinking about that, but I'm going to go to a different number now, and here's my new number. And this number, it corresponds with the number of submissions. So far, there's been 3,449 submissions of the no vote. Shelley Sender and Ron Lancaster, what percentage does the credit card company take? Should we send a check? That's a good question. If you do want to write a check, I think it's 2 or 3%, something like that. Shelley and Ron, are you thinking of making a pledge of $5,000? So I'm going to ask somebody, I'm not sure who to ask, Lily, I think, who's the treasurer, to put into the chat box where they should mail a check to. And the check should be made out to the small change fund and no other information put on the check. Don't write Stop Sprawl, Hamilton, or anything like that. Write a small change fund, make it payable to small change fund, and mail it to Stop Sprawl, and then they'll make that clear. So I'm going to ask Lily if she, I see Daniel's put a note there. Okay, so I'm now going to ask the question, $3,449 is equal to the amount Linda's donated already. And I'm wondering, Linda, how much did you donate? How much did you pledge? Did you make our $5,000 pledge? So thank you, Linda, for donating. So is there somebody who pledged $3,449? Daphne Payne's asking, can we use e-transfer? I'm going to let Danny answer that question. Is there somebody who would pledge $3,449? That's a nice round number. You can round it up to 3,500 if you like. I made a donation less than 5,000. Hopefully others can make a donation that they can afford. Absolutely. Is there somebody who would pledge $2,500? If you pledge $2,500, we know it will be matched automatically by our anonymous donor. Again, if we were in the room, we could see each other. Dawn McLean, to everyone, $3,500. Wow, Dawn. Thank you very much. That's 3,449 rounded up to 3,500. Thank you, Dawn. And with the magic of our anonymous donor, that's $7,000 so far. Is there somebody who would make a pledge of $2,000? Thank you, Aki, for your donation of $100. That's terrific. Thank you. Is there someone who would make a pledge of, again, we're here in Zoom land, so it takes a while for this to be clear, an anonymous donation of 500. So we're up to 4,000 already. Somebody's going to keep a running total and pass that on to me, but 4,000 is a terrific start. Is there anyone who would make a pledge of $1,500? Oh, we're at 4,200. I just got a note. We're at 4,200. That's terrific. Anyone make a pledge of $1,500? Could be paid in installments of $100 a month or $150 a month. Michelle just pledged $1,500. Thank you, Michelle. And again, with the magic of our generous donor, that $1,500 is $3,000. Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to make a pledge of $1,500? How about a pledge of $1,000? This senior citizen will donate 100. Thank you. Caroline Hill, $1,000. Thank you, Caroline. Wow, Dawn. Wow, Michelle. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a pledge of $1,000? How about $750? Somebody's got their hand up. Kelly's got her hand up. And I don't know, Kelly, is you got your hand up because you're making a pledge? If you are, Kelly, please pledge that into the chat box. So maybe I wasn't clear enough about that, folks. If you're making a pledge, please pass it into the pledge box. So that's 200 from Annette. Thank you, Annette, to the 200 and you sent it already. Thank you. Is 200 from Bob and Gail. Thank you. 200 from Internet Payment. Terrific. We're at 6,200 so far. How about $750? Is there somebody who pledged $750? Kelly O'Grady pledges 1,000. Thank you, Kelly. Does this feel a little bit like a telethon? As this, you know, and resistance matters. Resistance matters, as we know. Zoe Green sent a donation to Small Change. Thank you very much. Thank you, Nancy, for the $100 donation. Resistance matters. You know, it's important. We know that these campaigns, it's kind of like dominoes. They put other things in motion. The cancellation, stopping the Duffins Creek and canceling that MZO and canceling one in Stratford, we've heard has put a real chill on the Conservative government. That there may not be any more MZOs because of the resistance to that and because of us being in this election period. So stopping sprawl here in Hamilton may stop sprawl in lots of other communities. It's really very important. Is there somebody else? Is there anybody who willing to pledge $500? I see Chris and Morgan have pledged 150. Alex has pledged 100. Dennis and I will donate 500. Patricia and Dennis Baker. Thank you very much, Patricia and Dennis. Carol Ann Forster, $100. Is there anybody else who wants to pledge $500? It's a reverse auction. Absolutely, that's what this is, Ruth. It's a reverse auction. $500 and a tax receipt, says Lily. Don and Harriet Woodside, $100. Sarah Jama can pledge 100. Wow, Sarah, thank you very much. I'm looking to Danny to give me an update on this. 150 from Richard and Ginny Pierce, 250 from Sandy Shaw. Is anybody else who'd like to pledge $250? 100 to the Small Change from Jackie. Is anybody else who'd like to pledge $250? Jackie saying, thanks for all the hard work on this issue. As Summer says, as a student and a 19-year-old, I will pledge $120 to invest in my future. That's $10 a month, Summer. That's terrific. Thank you very much. Shelley and Ron say $250. Deirdre Pike and Renee $250. Dave and Sue, Carson $100. Thank you. We're going to keep them coming in here. $250 from the Higginsons, $250 from Karen. Are there other $250 from the Clausen, CA Clausens, everyone? $100 from Monica Palkowski, $100 from Lorraine Roy, $100 from Ann Washington, $150 from Nan Hurst, $100 from Laurel Grace. This is terrific, folks. It's like a snowball. It's rolling. Keep it rolling. Whatever donation you are able to make is really important and will help us to help your leadership group to plan with confidence for the next phase. I'm going to ask Danny, who's doing some math here for us, to give me an update pretty soon. And then 100 in honor of the pumpkin patch. Now, Howard, I read your chat about the pumpkin patch, and I was curious, as an out-of-towner, what the pumpkin patch is and what makes that special. So maybe everybody else knows, but if not, Howard, please put an explanation or a short note into the chat box about the pumpkin. I see more donations. Laura Katz, $100, 100 from Jennifer Davis, 150 from Marianne, 100 from Stephanie B, 100 from Haureen Hassan, 200 from Dee Sperry. This is terrific. So you'll be able to, your pledges will be able to, you can fulfill your pledge when you want to. That I think we're going to keep putting the link to the Small Change Fund in the chat box now, so that you can make your donation now if you wish, or tomorrow, and we will send out a reminder email with that information. And that will also include how you can make a donation by check. I see that Progress 14 for Progress Hamilton, $100 from Stephanie B. Well, that was, sorry, that was the email address. 200 from Dee Sperry, 100 from 50 from both of us here, Nathan and Chantel. Howard Cole says, the pumpkin patch was adjacent to the wetlands we just saved. I picked at that farm when I was a kid. And boy, don't we want other kids to be able to pick at that pumpkin patch. Kate Dalton, $50, John Kay, $100, Lori Peel, $100, Joyce, $100. Linda, I'm going to ask you to come back here and join me on the screen. We're going to get an update in a minute. We're at 12,720, and I think there's another 100 from Myrna and 100 from Cheryl Boblin. So I'm going to, yeah, woohoo, says Akira. And well, actually, Akira says woo. He didn't say who. I kind of got ahead of myself there. Maybe what he'll say woo-hoo next, or somebody will add the who to go with his woo. But we're going to let you keep on making pledges. $50 from Allison, $250 from Danny Lindemood, $50 from Elaine Atkins. So I'm going to let that keep going. I'm going to hand it back to you, Linda. And if you'll, in a few minutes, just before you finish up, call me back and I'll give you a total that we can share with the group.
Sure. Okay. Thanks, everyone. This is great, and just want to acknowledge that we appreciate all of your support. And I put into the chat too that we also appreciate the support that some of you have provided in other ways, non-monetary. I think that's really important, that we can all in some way contribute to help to get to where we know we all need to end up with this effort. So I just want to say this has been a really amazing evening. It's been so great to hear from people from within our community and from outside of our community share their perspectives on this issue that we're all fighting on and why it's so important. So I just want to again thank all of our guest speakers tonight for sharing and inspiring and encouraging us with their words. I think that's really important. For any of you who've been involved in campaigns, you know that that's important to get that support from others to keep you energized and moving forward. And I just want to add too that if there are people on the call tonight who are just starting to get involved, please reach out. There are lots of ways you can help, or take that advice that you've heard from all of us in talking to friends and family and neighbors. That's something really important that every single one of us can do wherever we are in the city. So reflect on that if you can, and keep pushing. Want to thank Mike for walking us through this important fundraising effort. It's an urgent one, and I think looking forward, we know, after July 23rd, there's still lots more to come. So we know that there's an important report back to council in October where they'll hear the results of this survey. We know that there are lots more steps to come in terms of a final decision being made on where and how Hamilton is going to accommodate growth into the future. We know there's a different way to do this. So we'll certainly need support to keep people aware of those next steps, to help to mobilize people to get involved. I think if anything, this effort, this campaign, as others have already said, has done a fantastic job of mobilizing so many people from all walks of life, of all ages, of all political stripes, to weigh in on this issue. And that's going to be a really important piece moving forward. We're going to need to continue to elevate our voices. We may well need expertise as well moving forward. So I think your support is really important for awareness raising and potentially for some expertise to help us too as we move forward with this effort. So I don't know what else to say other than this has been a fantastic night, and I'm feeling really energized. I hope everyone else on this call is feeling energized. We're going to need that energy because there's still so much to do. And Mike, maybe I'll pull you back in if you're ready to update.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay.
And so the last number I have, and I think things are still coming in here. I can just see another donation, but the last number I have is 14,640. And if you multiply that by 2, I think that makes us over $30,000.
Wow.
So that's really quite helpful to the campaign to prime the pump for what comes next. I think it's a fabulous and generous contribution from the community. There it is.
That's
and Linda,
fantastic.
though, I know the last thing I do, maybe to say this back to you, and I'm going to turn it back to you for the final word, but I was really moved by the music at the beginning of this. And there's something about cellos, I don't know for you, but for me, cellos are both invigorating and somber. And so it both got my energy going in the beginning, but it was also, a very reverent frame for the moment of silence we had at the beginning. That's how I experienced it anyway. And we're now going to, we like to end, we're going to end the meeting in a minute. You're going to end the meeting, but we leave the meeting open so that people can put final comments in the chat box. You can show some more love in the chat box for any of the speakers and all the speakers and the leadership and for each other and what you're doing. And after you close us out formally, Linda, we're going to put the music back on so people can feel that energy as the meeting ends. Thank you, Linda.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So what can I say? This is amazing. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and thank you everyone for your support. Please stay tuned. Please pay attention to information going out there with more details about how you can help. This is a critically important effort. Dare I say, we are facing an existential crisis. You heard that from our speakers tonight. The climate crisis is real. Our challenge with housing is real, but we need to move forward in ways very different from what we've done up until now. Our future really does depend on it. So thank you again, everyone, for taking the time tonight. Please, pay more attention to this issue if you're just starting to get involved. There are lots of people in this community who are happy to share more. We hope that you'll continue to stay engaged and join the movement to help us transition to a sustainable, climate resilient, inclusive Hamilton. We all deserve that. Our children and our grandchildren, future generations deserve that too. So thank you, everyone. And we hope that we'll hear from all of you and see you all at future events. Thanks so much. Good night.
We hope you enjoy our performance of Counting Stars by One Republic.
Thanks so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.